All right, so we got a whole bunch of stuff to go through here. Reddit threads, YouTube reviews, even the official specs and manual for this Ride1up Portola e-bike. You seem pretty keen on it, but want to make sure there aren't any gotchas, right?
Yeah, I mean, enthusiasm is great, but a little healthy skepticism never hurts, especially with something like this.
Exactly, especially for an investment like this. And I got to say, from what I'm seeing so far, the Portola seems to check a lot of boxes, but there are some quirks we should definitely unpack. For starters, did you know this thing can basically shapeshift between Class 1, 2, and E3? It's got to be handy in places with all those, different e-bike rules.
Yeah, it's pretty versatile. It's almost like they were thinking ahead, knowing how messy e-bike laws are in different places.
Okay, so let's start with the good stuff.
Mm.
It's got people raving about this Portola. That 750-watt motor sounds like a beast, especially on hills. All those Redditors and YouTubers seem pretty impressed with its power.
And it's not just like raw power either. People are talking about replacing car trips altogether. You combine that 750-watt motor with the 28-mile-per-hour top speed, and it starts to look like a serious commuter option.
And it seems to deliver on the range, too. Ride1up claims 25 to 45 miles, which most owners seem to back up, especially with the upgraded battery.
Well,
Oh, and for those of us in apartments, that compact folding design is a huge win.
absolutely. And you see that in the YouTube reviews, too, how smooth and easy that folding mechanism is. It's not clunky at all.
Right.
And that folding strap they include, brilliant. It makes carrying the thing so much easier, especially when you consider it weighs almost 60 pounds.
Yeah, smart design for sure. Speaking of which, everyone seems to be raving about the overall build quality too. The paint job, the frame, no skimpy on the details.
You don't always see that, especially with folding e-bikes. Companies often cut corners there, but the Portola seems like a different story. It's encouraging to see that kind of quality at this price.
So we've got power practicality and build quality, but what about comfort? What are people saying about the ride itself?
Well, those wider tires and front suspension are getting a lot of love.
Hmm.
People say they smooth out the bumps and just make the ride more enjoyable. One of the YouTube reviewers, Rider Guide, I think actually said the 80 millimeters of suspension travel is better than what you find on some full-size e-bikes.
Wow, that's serious suspension for a foldable. And don't forget those hydraulic disc brakes. You don't usually see those at this price.
Mm-hmm.
And reviewers consistently mention how much better the stopping power is.
It's a good combo. Safety and performance all in one. Ride1up seems to have made some smart choices there. Speaking of smart, have you seen that Kevin Breeze review where he shows how to take out the battery? It's incredibly easy. You don't even have to fold the bike.
Oh yeah, that was slick. And did you catch the part about the optional passenger kit? You can turn this thing into a two-person bike. Now that's versatile.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day with folding e-bikes. It really opens up how you can use it.
Okay, so far so good. The Portola is sounding pretty darn impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get too carried away, there are a few things you should probably know before you hit that buy button.
Right, because no e-bike is perfect. And the Portola definitely has a few quirks that might be deal breakers for some people. So first off, let's talk height. One of the reviewers over at electrek.co mentioned the seat post maxes out pretty quickly. So if you're on the taller side, over 6 feet, let's say you might want to, double check the fit before you commit.
Good point. Comfort is key, especially if you're planning on longer rides. Then there's the whole pedal assist thing. The Portola uses a cadence sensor, not a torque sensor, which I know some people have strong opinions about.
Yeah, torque sensors, they respond to how hard you're pedaling, so the assist feels more natural, more seamless. Cadence sensors, on the other hand, they just detect if you're pedaling or not, not how much effort you're putting in.
Right, and I did see a few comments on Reddit about the Portola's cadence assist feeling a little laggy or not as responsive as a torque sensor. Someone even said they'd prefer a torque sensor for safety reasons. So it's definitely something to consider.
It's a trade-off for sure. Torque sensors give you that more natural riding experience, but they also tend to bump up the price.
So it's a balanced performance versus affordability. Speaking of trade-offs, there's the battery situation. As of late 2024, the battery is not UL certified, which is a safety standard some people look for.
Yeah, that did raise a few eyebrows over on Reddit. It seems like Ride1up IS working on getting UL certification, but for now it's still a point of concern for some potential buyers.
Especially since other companies like Electric already have UL certified batteries in their e-bikes.
Makes you wonder if maybe Ride1up is prioritizing, keeping the price down over safety in this case.
That's a good point. Something to think about, for sure. But on a more positive note, let's switch gears to some real-world owner tips and quirks we found. One owner on Reddit mentioned they wish the throttle was a bit more variable. It's basically just on or off right now.
Interesting. It sounds like they're used to e-bikes with that smoother, more gradual throttle control. Maybe something that works more like a torque sensor where the assist adjusts to how you're pedaling.
Right. finding that sweet spot between control and responsiveness. Speaking of responsiveness, the manual really stresses making sure the derailleur is adjusted properly. Apparently, that powerful motor could actually cause damage if the derailleur gets caught in the wheel.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that even with a high-quality e-bike like the Portola, maintenance is still important. It might be worth having a bike shop check that derailleur adjustment just to be safe, especially after shipping.
Definitely a smart move.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about actually carrying this thing. It's almost 60 pounds, which isn't exactly light. A few steps here and there, no problem. But forget about carrying it up a whole flight of stairs. The Reddit thread, Portola up and down steps, pretty much confirmed that.
Yeah, I bet those 60 pounds start to feel a lot heavier when you're going up multiple flights. Yeah. Something to consider if you live in a walk-up apartment.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The Portola has a lot going for it. Power, practicality, comfort, and a price that's hard to beat.
But like any e-bike, it's got its quirks. The cadence sensor, the non-UL certified battery, and the weight. Those are definitely things to keep in mind.
It all comes down to weighing those trade-offs against what you need and what's important to you. Maybe we can get a better sense of those trade-offs if we compare the Portola to some other popular folding e-bikes. What do you think about starting with the Electric XP 3.0? That one seems pretty popular in this category. How do they stack up weight-wise and when it comes to folded size?
Well, funny enough, the Electric XP 3.0 is actually a bit heavier. It comes in at 64 pounds, so the Portola is lighter there. And for folded dimensions, Portola wins again. It folds down to 33 inches long, 19 inches wide, and 25.9 inches high. Electric is bigger, 37 inches long, 28 inches wide, and 28 inches high.
So the Portola is definitely more compact once it's folded up. Those few inches can make a big difference if you're trying to fit it in a small car trunk or stored in a tight space. What about price? How do they compare there?
The Portola starts at $995 for the base model, or $1,095 if you want the upgraded battery. The Electric XP 3.0 starts at $999 for the base and goes up to $1,199 with the long-range battery.
So the Portola is a tad more affordable, especially if you go for the upgraded battery. It's crazy how competitive this whole folding e-bike market has become.
It really is. You can get a really decent feature-packed folding e-bike for under $1,100 these days. But let's go beyond just the numbers and specs and see what actual owners are saying. Those real-world experiences often tell a different story than those fancy marketing brochures.
Absolutely. I always find those owner reviews super helpful. Let's start with that Reddit thread. Any long-term Ride1up Portola riders here, it's full of insights from people who have actually put some miles on these bikes.
Yeah, it's a goldmine of info. Everything from maintenance tips to how the bike handles in different conditions. One owner mentioned having to realign the front brake caliper and lube the chain after a few hundred miles, which is pretty normal for any bike that gets ridden a lot.
Yeah, just a good reminder that even high-quality parts need a little TLC every now and then. Another owner said their rear brake was getting kind of spongy, and the actuation point was getting closer to the handlebars. They were keeping an eye on it, but it hadn't become a major issue yet.
Sounds like they might need to bleed the brakes soon. That's a pretty straightforward maintenance thing, just getting any air bubbles out of the brake lines.
Oh, and there was this one comment that really caught my eye. Someone wrote, I always wondered why people gravitate towards 20-inch tires on bikes like the Portola, especially when there are Class 3 e-bikes with larger 27-inch tires that can reach those higher speeds more comfortably.
It's an interesting point. Larger wheels definitely give you a more stable and comfortable ride at higher speeds, but they also add weight and bulk, which isn't ideal for a folding e-bike.
Yeah, it's all about finding the right balance for what you need. Portability versus speed and comfort. What else did you find in those Reddit threads?
Well, someone was asking specifically about using the Portola for commuting. The thread was called, "Is the Ride1up Portola good for a commuter?" And I'm guessing the answer is yes. But let's see what the owners had to say.
I'm curious too, especially since that's what a lot of people are using these folding e-bikes for.
So the person who started the thread was looking for a bike for their 3.5-mile commute, which included a couple of decent hills. A bunch of owners chimed in with positive experiences, saying they loved how comfortable and durable the Portola was and how well it handled those hills.
Not surprising with that 750-watt motor. One owner even said they were getting about 35 miles on a single charge with their riding style, which was mostly using pedal assist level 2 in gears 3 and 4, keeping a speed around 13 to 14 miles per hour.
That's got to be reassuring for anyone worried about running out of juice.
It really shows how much riding style can affect battery life. But even in that thread, a few concerns popped up.
Like what?
Well, someone mentioned they always wondered why people go for 20-inch tires on bikes like the Portola when there are Class 3 e-bikes with bigger 27-inch tires that can handle those higher speeds more comfortably. They said they prefer a faster bike with more range and felt like the larger wheels delivered that.
So again, it comes down to priorities, portability versus speed and comfort. Anything else?
Someone else brought up water getting into the battery port, which could be a problem. Yeah, especially if you're commuting and get caught in the rain. Did anyone have any solutions for that?
Luckily, another owner said they just bought some neoprene Velcro covers for the battery. Simple fix that could save you a lot of trouble down the line.
I love those practical tips. It's like having a whole community of e-bike experts at your fingertips. All right, let's switch gears and check out some of those YouTube reviews. I always find it helpful to see these bikes in action.
Me too. Visuals can definitely show you things that words just can't quite capture. Let's start with Electric XP3 versus Ride1up Portola, the best electric folding bike from e-biking today. It's a good head-to-head comparison of two of the most popular models out there.
Perfect. I'm always curious to see how the Portola stacks up against the competition.
Yeah.
So what jumped out at you in that review?
Well, the reviewer starts off by saying both the Portola and the Electric XP 3.0 are priced pretty similarly. So the choice really comes down to features and how they perform. And when it comes to power, the Portola is the clear winner. It's got that 750-watt motor and 65 Newton meters of torque.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that in other reviews, too. The Portola is a powerhouse, especially compared to the Electric XP 3.0's 500-watt motor and 55 Newton meters of torque.
Yeah.
Did they mention range at all?
They did, and that's where the Electric XP 3.0 might have an edge, especially with the long-range battery, which can get you up to 65 miles. The Portola's upgraded battery tops out at 45.
So it really depends on how far you need to go. If you've got a long commute or you're planning on longer rides, that extra range might be worth it. But for most everyday use, the Portola's range is still pretty good. What else did you pick up from that comparison?
Oh, they pointed out that the Electric SP 3.0 has a UL-certified battery, while Ride1up is still working on getting theirs certified.
That's important. UL certification is definitely a plus, and it's something to factor in when you're deciding. Did they have any thoughts on the Portola's design or how it rides?
Yeah, they really like the Portola's pedal assist system. They said it's more advanced and sensitive than the Electric's. Apparently, the Portola's assist kicks in with just 10 degrees of rotation compared to over 90 degrees for the Electric. That translates to a much more responsive and natural ride.
Interesting. So the Electric might win on range and that UL-certified battery, but the Portola seems to take the lead when it comes to responsiveness and overall ride quality. What other points of comparison did they bring up?
They mentioned that the Portola uses higher quality components, specifically the Reintion Rhino FR5 battery, which is known for being reliable and easy to remove. They contrasted that with the Electric XP 3.0's more budget-friendly folding battery, which has a less durable aluminum case and requires you to fold the bike to take it out.
So it's another trade-off. Do you go for the cheaper option and maybe sacrifice a bit on components, or do you spend a bit more for that extra quality and attention to detail?
Exactly. And then there's the suspension. The Portola has 80 millimeters of suspension travel compared to just 50 millimeters on the Electric XP 3.0. That's a pretty big difference, especially if you're riding on rougher terrain or you just really value a comfortable ride.
Sounds like the Portola is more versatile when it comes to different riding conditions. Did they have a clear favorite between the two bikes?
Well, they actually gave the edge to the Electric XP 3.0 when it comes to folding. They said its folded dimensions are a bit smaller and it's slightly easier to lift and move around because it's a tad lighter.
Interesting. So even though the Portola is more compact when it's folded, the Electric might actually be a bit more portable in practice. What was their final verdict?
They emphasized that both bikes are great choices for travelers, people who like to explore, and new e-bike riders.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they recommend the Electric XP 3.0 if foldability and a UL-certified battery are your top priorities. The Portola gets the thumbs up for its compact design, more adjustable pedal assist, and those higher quality components.
It sounds like a fair assessment, laying out the strengths and weaknesses of each model. In the end, the best choice really depends on what the rider is looking for and what matters most to them.
Totally. It's about finding the right bike for your riding style and your lifestyle.
Okay. I think that's a good place to pause for. We've gone through a ton of info from the specs and features to what actual owners have to say.
We've really dug into the pros and cons, the trade-offs, and those key comparisons.
And we're not done yet. We've got even more YouTube reviews to explore, and I'm sure there are plenty more insights waiting for us in those. So stick around. We'll be right back after this. Okay, back to those YouTube reviews and see what else we can learn. I'm really curious about the real Delo's take on the Portola. He actually bought one for his wife, so we get a totally different perspective there.
Yeah, his video, Part 1, Ride1up Portola, May 2024 W Electric XP 3.0, is a cool real-world comparison because he already owns electric XP 3.0.
Right off the bat, he mentions his wife specifically wanted hydraulic disc brakes. The mechanical brakes on her old e-bike were just too hard on her hands.
That's a good point about the Portola's accessibility. Hydraulic brakes are way easier to use, especially if you don't have a lot of hand strength. It makes e-biking doable for more people.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, they had to show off that 750-watt motor. They were super impressed with the power, especially compared to their electric XP 3.0.
It seems like everyone loves that motor. It's definitely one of the Portola's biggest selling points.
There's even a part where they do a whole 360 spin of the bike, showing off that turquoise color. They said their wife is obsessed with it.
It's a good reminder that looks matter, too. E-bikes aren't just about getting around anymore. They're like a fashion statement.
Totally. And they get bonus points for showing off the Ride1up hat that came with the bike. Free swag is always a win. Okay, let's move on to Kevin Breeze's review, Ride1up Portola electric bike review. He's great at explaining things in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah, he's got a real knack for making even the technical stuff super relatable. And in this one, he really focuses on how practical the Portola is for people living in the suburbs. People who might be thinking about ditching their cars but aren't quite ready to go full bike commuter.
It makes sense. For a lot of people, a regular bike just isn't practical for everyday stuff. But an e-bike like the Portola could be a game changer. And he's not shy about highlighting those Class 3 capabilities either. He actually tells viewers to skip those entry-level Class 1 e-bikes and go straight for a Class 3 like the Portola.
Sounds like he's learned from experience. Better to invest in a bike that can handle what you need rather than having to upgrade later.
He even admits that he started with a Class 1 and quickly realized he needed more. So he's speaking from experience. And I love how he addresses those fears people have about those higher speeds. He's like, hey, you can ride a Class 3 at whatever speed you're comfortable with.
It's true. You're in control. You can use the pedal assist to make things easier, or you can rely more on your own power.
Then he gets into the unboxing, showing all the details, the charger, the keys, that Ride1up hat, again, the toolkit, the manuals. It's like Christmas morning. And he points out that the Portola comes mostly assembled, which is awesome.
That's a huge plus for people who aren't super handy or just want to start riding as soon as possible.
Right. Nobody wants to spend hours putting a bike together. He also shows how to take the battery out, which is super easy.
Yeah.
He even suggests that you could carry a spare battery on longer rides because of that quick release design.
That's a great idea, especially if you're going on a longer adventure and want to make sure you don't run out of juice. Did he have any complaints about the Portola?
He did bring up one potential security issue. The keys are only for taking out the battery. They don't actually turn the bike on, so someone could still steal it even without the keys.
Good point. You might want to get an extra lock or some kind of security system if you're planning on leaving it unattended in public.
Definitely a good idea. Then he goes through all the display functions, shows how to switch between Class 1, 2, and 3 modes.
That versatility is so important, especially with all the different e-bike laws out there. It's like having a built-in way to stay legal.
Exactly. Then he moves on to the physical parts of the bike, the brakes, the throttle, the shifter, the bell, the grips. He covers it all. And he's especially impressed with the quality of the grips and the stopping power of those hydraulic brakes.
It's those little details that really make a difference in how much you enjoy the ride. Sounds like Ride1up didn't skimp on quality.
Then he shows the folding process, which is super simple and easy to understand.
Yeah.
And he loves that strap design that keeps the folded bike secure and makes it easier to carry.
Those little design touches can make a big difference when it comes to practicality.
For sure. He wraps up by talking about the Portola's overall value, the performance, the reliability, the price, and how easy it is to use. He gives it a big thumbs up, especially for people who want a practical and versatile e-bike for commuting, running errands, and just riding for fun.
Yeah. It's like a pretty solid endorsement. Okay, let's check out Rider Guide's review. Ride1up Portola review. Is this the perfect folding commuter e-bike? They're always really focused on design and performance, so I'm interested to hear what they have to say.
Me too. I bet they have some good insights about the suspension and braking systems. They're usually pretty thorough when it comes to that stuff.
Right away, they talk about how much value you get for your money with the Portola. They point out that folding e-bikes are a good option for people on a budget because you don't need a bike rack.
That's true. It's a cost-saving factor that a lot of people don't think about. And they also get into the practicality of those wider 20-inch tires. They say that combined with the front suspension, they make for a much smoother and more stable ride.
They're really impressed with the 80 millimeters of suspension travel. They even say it's better than some full-size e-bikes they've tested.
Wow, that's high praise for a foldable. And they point out that you can lock out the suspension too, which makes pedaling more efficient on smooth surfaces.
Those little features that give you more control and let you customize the ride are always nice. They definitely appreciate that kind of attention to detail. What did they think about the drivetrain?
They seem to like the Shimano Altus 8-speed derailleur. They said it has a wider gear range than the usual 7-speed systems, which lets you pedal more efficiently at higher speeds.
Makes sense. And of course, they loved that 750-watt motor and 28-mile-per-hour top speed. They point out that you don't usually see that kind of power in a folding e-bike at this price.
The Portola's secret weapon? They also go through the battery options, recommending the upgrade if you need more range. And like everyone else, they love how easy it is to take the battery out.
Ride1up definitely got that part right. What about the cockpit and controls? Any thoughts on those?
They said the black and white display is easy to read, and the thumb throttle is nice and responsive. They also like that the shifter is positioned so you can reach it easily without having to move your hand around.
Ergonomics are so important, especially on those longer rides. It's clear they're paying attention to those details.
And they're big fans of those hydraulic disc brakes. They called them a rare find at this price point. They even mentioned the large 180mm rotors, which make the braking even better.
Ride1up definitely didn't cut corners when it comes to safety.
They also talk about the extra features like the metal fenders, the rear rack, and the overall build quality. They seem really impressed with how sturdy the Portola is.
It shows that Ride1up is committed to quality, even with their more affordable bikes.
They finish by saying the Portola is one of, if not the best folding e-bikes you can get at this price. That's a pretty big statement.
It seems like that's the general consensus from all of the reviews we've looked at. So what's the bottom line? What should our listeners take away from all this?
I think it's safe to say the Ride1up Portola is a really solid choice for anyone looking for a powerful, practical, and well-built folding e-bike. It's got a lot going for it, especially for the price.
Yeah, it seems to check a lot of boxes, comfort, performance features, and of course that all-important foldability. And while it does have a few quirks like that cadence sensor and the battery not being UL certified, those might not be deal breakers for everyone, especially when you consider the overall value.
Right. And it's worth remembering that Ride1up is a good company with a solid reputation. They seem to really listen to customer feedback, and they're working on getting that battery certification.
So in the end, it's up to you to decide what's most important. But based on what we've seen in this deep dive, the Portola is definitely worth checking out.
All right, before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. We saw some comments from owners who said they got paint chips on their bikes during shipping. Would that be enough to make you think twice about the Portola? Or are you the kind of person who sees those as battle scars and part of the adventure?
It all comes down to what matters most to you. But it is a reminder that even the best products can get dinged up during shipping.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has been helpful. Happy riding.